The morning after Mrs. Harris applied that strange green paste to her back, she stood up from bed without a single wince of pain. For the first time in 12 years, her spine felt like it belonged to a 30-year-old woman again. Her doctor couldn't believe the x-rays when she walked into his office 3 days later, moving like someone half her age. What happened in that small farmhouse in rural Kentucky wasn't magic. It was something far more powerful. Something that's been growing in backyards across America for generations, dismissed as nothing more than a stubborn weed. Subscribe and like. If stories like this touch your heart and you believe there's wisdom in the old ways, hit that subscribe button right now and give this video a thumbs up. Because what you're about to discover could change everything you thought you knew about healing. Mrs. Eleanor Harris had been tending her garden for 63 years. Every morning at sunrise, you'd find her among the tomatoes and beans, pulling weeds with the same steady hands that had raised 5 children and helped deliver half the babies in Hickman County. But on that Tuesday morning in late September, everything changed in an instant. She was reaching for the last of the season's green tomatoes when her foot caught on the garden hose. The fall wasn't dramatic, just a simple tumble backward onto the soft earth. But when she tried to get up, her lower back seized like a steel trap snapping shut. The pain was unlike anything she'd ever experienced. Not the dull ache she'd grown accustomed to over the years, but a sharp, electric fire that shot down her legs with every breath. Her neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, found her there 20 minutes later, unable to move, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. 3 days later, sitting in Dr. Morrison's office, Eleanor heard words that chilled her to the bone. "Mrs. Harris, your spine is severely compressed. We're looking at emergency surgery, and even then, I can't promise you'll walk normally again." The ride home from that appointment was the longest 15 minutes of her life. Surgery at 88 years old. The risks, the recovery time, the possibility of never working in her beloved garden again. That night, as she lay flat on her living room floor, because the bed caused too much agony, Eleanor's mind drifted to her grandmother's voice. Grandma Rose had passed when Eleanor was just 16, but her words echoed across the decades. "Child, the good Lord put everything we need right outside our door. We just forgot how to look." She thought about the countless times she'd watched Grandma Rose disappear into the fields behind their old homestead, returning with handfuls of what everyone else called weeds. How she'd brew teas and make poultices that seemed to cure everything, from bee stings to broken hearts. The next morning, something stirred deep in Eleanor's memory. She hobbled to her kitchen window and looked out at her garden. There, growing along the fence line, where it had thrived for decades, was a plant she'd been pulling and throwing away her entire gardening life. But this time, instead of seeing a nuisance, she saw something different. The broad-ribbed leaves. The way it seemed to grow anywhere, no matter how harsh the conditions. The way it always came back, stronger than before. This wasn't just any weed. This was the same plant she'd watched her grandmother gather on those long-ago summer mornings. Eleanor's hands trembled as she pulled on her gardening gloves. Each step toward that corner of her yard sent lightning bolts through her spine. But something deeper than pain was driving her forward now. This was the pull of generations, the whisper of ancestral knowledge that had been sleeping in her DNA. The plant she'd been discarding for 60 years stood before her like an old friend she'd forgotten to recognize. Plantago major, the white man's footprint, ribwort. Her grandmother had called it nature's bandage, and now Eleanor understood why. As she knelt beside the robust patch, memories flooded back like water through a broken dam. She remembered being 7 years old, watching Grandma Rose's gentle hands as she selected the perfect leaves. Not too old, not too young, Eleanor, just like picking the right apple. The plant will tell you which ones want to help. The leaves she chose were palm-sized and unblemished, with those distinctive parallel veins running from stem to tip like tiny highways carrying healing. She gathered 12 of the best ones, each selection made with an intuition that surprised her. Her body seemed to remember what her mind had forgotten. Back in her kitchen, Eleanor spread the leaves across her wooden cutting board. The same board, where she'd rolled biscuits for church suppers and chopped vegetables for family dinners. Now it would serve a different purpose, one that connected her to every woman in her lineage who had ever fought pain with nothing but faith and the gifts of the earth. She began to crush the leaves with the flat side of her largest knife, just as she'd seen her grandmother do. The moment the plant's cells broke open, a fresh green scent filled the air. It smelled like hope, like healing, like the very essence of life itself. What Eleanor didn't know then, but scientists have since discovered, is that she was releasing powerful compounds that had been helping humanity for thousands of years. Curcumin, a natural anti-inflammatory that reduces swelling more effectively than many modern medications. Allantoin, which speeds tissue repair and regeneration. Chlorogenic acid, which fights inflammation at the cellular level. But Eleanor didn't need to understand the science. She understood something far more important, the deep cellular memory that connects every grandmother to every granddaughter, every generation to the wisdom of those who came before. As she worked the leaves into a rough paste, adding just enough warm water to bind them together, she felt her grandmother's presence in the room, not in any supernatural way, but in the sure movement of her hands, the confidence that grew with each motion, the absolute certainty that what she was doing was right. The paste was ready, just as the sun began to set. It looked unremarkable, this green mixture in her ceramic bowl. But Eleanor could feel its potential humming like electricity in the air. She heated water on the stove until it was just shy of boiling, then soaked a clean cotton cloth in the steaming liquid. The hot compress would open her pores, her grandmother had always said, creating a pathway for the healing to enter. Standing at her kitchen sink, Eleanor looked out at her garden one more time. Tomorrow everything would be different. She could feel it in her bones, in the same way she'd always known when rain was coming or when the first frost would touch her tomatoes. Eleanor lowered herself onto her living room sofa with the careful precision of someone whose body had become a minefield of pain. The warm compress lay across her lower back and spread over that, the thick green paste that smelled of earth and possibility. The heat penetrated first, seeping through her skin like summer sunshine soaking into garden soil. For the first time in days, her muscles began to release their death grip on her spine. But it was what happened next that truly amazed her. As the plant's healing compounds absorbed into her inflamed tissues, Eleanor felt a sensation she'd almost forgotten. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of peace. Her back, which had felt like broken glass grinding against bone, began to quiet. The sharp electric jolts softened into gentle warmth. She lay there for 2 hours, watching the evening light fade through her lace curtains, feeling her body remember what it meant to be comfortable. When she finally rose to prepare for bed, she moved more easily than she had since her fall. That night, for the first time in 72 hours, Eleanor Harris slept. She dreamed of her grandmother's garden, of sun-dappled mornings and the sound of bees among the hollyhocks. In her dream, Grandma Rose smiled and nodded, her weathered hands cradling a bundle of the same broad leaves Eleanor had used. "You remembered, child. You finally remembered." Eleanor woke at dawn, as she had every day for 88 years. But this morning was different. This morning she sat up in bed without thinking about it first, without bracing herself, without the careful calculation of pain that had governed every movement for the past week. She stood. She walked to her bedroom window. She stretched her arms above her head and felt her spine lengthen like a flower reaching for sunlight. For a moment she wondered if she was still dreaming, but the cool morning air on her face, the familiar sounds of her neighborhood awakening, the solid floor beneath her bare feet, all confirmed what seemed impossible. The pain was gone, not diminished, not manageable, gone. Eleanor dressed quickly and walked to her kitchen, moving with a lightness she hadn't felt in years. Through her window, the same patch of Plantago that had saved her swayed gently in the morning breeze, as if acknowledging what had passed between them. 3 days later, Dr. Morrison stared at Eleanor's x-rays with the expression of a man who'd forgotten how to blink. The inflammation that had shown up like angry storm clouds on her previous films had virtually disappeared. The compressed spaces between her vertebrae showed clear signs of relief. "Mrs. Harris," he said slowly, setting down the films and looking at her over his reading glasses, I need you to tell me exactly what you've been doing." Eleanor smiled, the same gentle smile she'd inherited from her grandmother. "I remembered something I'd forgotten, Doctor. Something my grandmother taught me when I was just a girl." She told him about the Plantago, about the paste and the warm compress, about sleeping through the night without pain for the first time in months. Dr. Morrison listened with the attention he usually reserved for medical journals and continuing education seminars. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "In 35 years of practice," he finally said, "I've learned that the human body has an incredible capacity to heal itself. Sometimes it just needs the right encouragement." He stood and walked to his window, looking out at the parking lot, where he now noticed the same broad-leaved plants grew in the cracks of the sidewalk. "Mrs. Harris, I'd like to cancel that surgery. I think you've found something better." As Eleanor left his office that day, walking tall and steady, she carried with her not just the gift of her restored mobility, but something even more precious: the knowledge that the healing she needed had been growing in her own backyard all along. Now let me share with you exactly how Eleanor created her miraculous healing remedy, because this knowledge belongs to all of us. What she discovered that September night wasn't complicated medicine requiring expensive equipment or hard-to-find ingredients. It was the kind of simple, powerful healing that our great-grandmothers understood in their bones. First, you need to identify Plantago major, also known as broadleaf plantain. This remarkable plant grows in nearly every state across America, thriving in lawns, along walkways, and in those overlooked corners of yards where nothing else seems to want to grow. Look for leaves that are 3 to 6 inches long, oval-shaped, with prominent parallel veins running from the base to the tip like the lines in your palm. The leaves grow in a rosette pattern, spreading out from a central point close to the ground. The beauty of Plantago is that it's almost impossible to confuse with anything harmful. The parallel veins are its signature, and once you learn to recognize them, you'll start seeing this healing helper everywhere. Eleanor always said it was as if the plant wanted to be found by those who needed it most. For Eleanor's healing paste, gather 8 to 12 of the freshest, most vibrant leaves you can find. Choose ones that feel substantial in your hands, with no brown spots or insect damage. The plant's healing power is strongest in leaves that look like they're bursting with life. Wash the leaves gently under cool running water, then pat them dry with a clean kitchen towel. Place them on a cutting board and use the flat side of a large knife to crush them thoroughly. This isn't delicate work. You want to break down the plant's cell walls completely to release those powerful healing compounds. As you crush the leaves, you'll notice they begin to release their moisture and take on a paste-like consistency. This is exactly what you want. The crushed leaves should look almost like coarse pesto, with visible plant fibers held together by the plant's own juices. Add just enough warm water to create a thick, spreadable paste. Think of the consistency of homemade jam, thick enough to stay in place, but moist enough to maintain good contact with your skin. Too much water will dilute the plant's potency, while too little won't allow the healing compounds to penetrate effectively. Now comes the crucial part that made Eleanor's treatment so effective: the warm compress technique. Heat a pot of water until it's steaming but not quite boiling. Soak a clean cotton cloth or several layers of cheesecloth in this hot water, then wring it out until it's damp but not dripping. Apply the Plantago paste directly to the affected area of your back. Eleanor always said to use enough to cover the painful region completely, about the thickness of frosting on a cake. Then place the warm, damp cloth over the paste, creating a healing sandwich that allows the plant's medicine to penetrate deeply into inflamed tissues. The warmth opens your pores and increases circulation, creating pathways for the Plantago's natural anti-inflammatory compounds to reach exactly where they're needed. Eleanor would lie still for at least 2 hours, refreshing the warm compress whenever it began to cool. What makes this remedy even more powerful is its ability to work alongside other natural healers. Eleanor discovered that adding a few drops of arnica tincture to her paste intensified its pain-relieving properties. Arnica, long treasured by mountain folk for treating bruises and muscle soreness, creates a synergy with Plantago that seems to accelerate healing. For those dealing with chronic inflammation, Eleanor also recommended alternating her Plantago treatment with warm baths containing Epsom salts and a few drops of wintergreen essential oil. The magnesium in Epsom salts helps relax muscle tension, while wintergreen contains natural compounds similar to aspirin. The timing of Eleanor's discovery wasn't accidental. Plantago is most potent from late spring through early fall, when the leaves are actively growing and full of healing energy. During winter months, dried Plantago leaves can be ground into powder and mixed with a small amount of coconut oil to create a healing salve that works almost as effectively as the fresh paste. But perhaps the most important ingredient in Eleanor's remedy wasn't something you can pick or purchase. It was faith. Faith in the wisdom of generations, faith in the healing power that grows all around us, faith that sometimes the simplest solutions are the most profound. Word of Eleanor's miraculous. Recovery spread through Hickman County like morning mist across the fields. It started with her neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who had witnessed Eleanor's transformation from a woman who could barely walk to someone who was back in her garden within a week, moving with the grace of someone decades younger. Within a month, Eleanor's kitchen had become an informal healing center. Every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, neighbors would arrive with their own stories of chronic pain, their own struggles with backs that betrayed them, and medicines that promised more than they delivered. There was Frank Miller, whose 30 years of farm work had left him bent and aching. After just 1 week of Eleanor's Plantago treatments, he was throwing hay bales again. Sarah Beth Coleman, the retired school teacher whose arthritis had forced her to give up her beloved quilting, found herself threading needles with steady hands after discovering the anti-inflammatory power of this humble yard plant. Each person who tried Eleanor's remedy became a living testament to the healing wisdom that had been hidden in plain sight. They learned to identify Plantago in their own yards, to respect the timing of harvest, to trust in the gentle power of plants that asked for nothing but attention and gratitude. Eleanor never charged anyone for her knowledge. How could she put a price on something that had been freely given to her by her grandmother, freely grown by the earth itself? Instead, she asked each person to pass the knowledge forward, to remember that healing often grows where we least expect. Yet she also began to document everything, filling a notebook with careful observations about which leaves worked best, how weather affected the plant's potency, which combinations with other natural remedies produced the most dramatic results. This wasn't just folk wisdom anymore, it was the foundation of a healing practice that could help thousands. Dr. Morrison, initially skeptical, became one of Eleanor's strongest supporters after seeing patient after patient return to his office with remarkable improvements. He began referring people to Eleanor's informal classes, recognizing that sometimes the best medicine doesn't come from a pharmacy. The beauty of what Eleanor rediscovered is its accessibility. Plantago doesn't require special growing conditions or expensive supplements. It doesn't need prescriptions or insurance approvals. It simply needs recognition, respect, and the willingness to believe that nature provides exactly what we need when we need it most. As Eleanor often tells the stream of visitors who continue to seek her guidance, this isn't about replacing doctors or dismissing modern medicine. This is about remembering that healing has many faces, and sometimes the gentlest approach is also the most powerful. Today, at 90 years old, Eleanor Harris tends her garden with the same steady hands that first discovered the healing power of Plantago. Her back remains strong and flexible, a living testament to the wisdom that grows freely in backyards across America. But perhaps more importantly, she has become a bridge between the old ways and the new, proving that the healing knowledge of our ancestors isn't outdated, it's eternal. The story of Mrs. Eleanor Harris reminds us that extraordinary healing often comes in the most ordinary packages. A simple plant that most people consider a weed became the key to reclaiming her mobility, her independence, and her joy in life. What Eleanor rediscovered is available to anyone willing to look beyond the complex and expensive to find the simple and free. Plantago major grows in all 50 states, asking nothing but recognition for its incredible gift of healing. The same compounds that eliminated Eleanor's chronic pain in a single night are waiting in yards and fields across America. This isn't about replacing modern medicine. It's about remembering that nature has been our pharmacy for thousands of years. It's about having the courage to trust in gentle remedies that work with our bodies instead of against them. It's about honoring the wisdom of those who came before us while creating health and vitality for ourselves. Your own healing journey might begin today with a simple walk around your yard, looking for the broad leaves and parallel veins of nature's own pain reliever. What seems like the humblest weed might be exactly what your body has been waiting for. Remember Eleanor's words. The good Lord put everything we need right outside our door. We just forgot how to look. Perhaps it's time to remember. If Eleanor's story touched your heart and opened your mind to the healing power that grows all around us, I want to hear from you. Hit that subscribe button to join our community of people who believe in the wisdom of natural healing. Give this video a thumbs up if you're ready to look at your own backyard with new eyes. But most importantly, leave a comment below and tell me what weeds grow in your yard that you've never really noticed before. Share a photo if you can. Let's help each other rediscover the healing helpers that nature has placed right outside our doors. Your comment could be the beginning of someone else's healing journey. Together, we can keep alive the wisdom that Eleanor's grandmother passed down, ensuring that future generations will know where to look when they need nature's gentle medicine most.